It started as a whisper across the border, Canadian consumers skipping over American brands, travelers canceling hotel stays, and snowbirds deciding not to return. But now it's a full-blown economic backlash. Canada's silent boycott of U.S. goods, services, and tourism is hitting harder than anyone expected. And the damage? It's not falling evenly. Some states are on the brink. From coast to coast, U.S. communities that once thrived on cross-border trade, tourism, and trust are now watching their economies unravel. One in particular is facing devastation: Florida. Let's count down the 10 U.S. states being crushed by this Canadian boycott and reveal how close they are to economic collapse. And before we get started, don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on more engaging content. Number 10. Florida. Florida was once the crown jewel for Canadian snowbirds, but in 2025, the relationship is fracturing fast. According to Reuters, Canadian tourist visits to the U.S. fell nearly 40% in May, with Florida hit hardest. Canadians used to flood the Sunshine State during the winter, filling RV parks, condos, and beachfront hotels. Now those same spaces sit half empty. Businesses in places like Naples, Sarasota, and Fort Lauderdale are reporting revenue drops of up to 60% compared to last year. And it's not just tourism. The New York Post revealed that border towns and resort communities across Florida are seeing thousands of Canadians cancel long-term leases, pulling out of planned investments, and shuttering seasonal businesses. This isn't temporary. A growing number of Canadians, according to CTV News, say they're done spending in the U.S. as long as trade tensions and political hostility remain. Florida's $12 billion Canadian tourism pipeline, it's leaking fast. And without drastic change, Florida may never recover the snowbirds it once took for granted. Number 9. Arizona. Arizona, a state known for its desert beauty and bustling border commerce, is suddenly feeling the sting of silence. Once thriving with Canadian shoppers and snowbirds, towns like Yuma and Nogales are facing an economic drought. What happened? The answer lies in the growing Canadian boycott. As tensions over tariffs and political jabs escalate, Canadian visitors are simply staying home. In the past, Arizona's economy leaned heavily on seasonal Canadian tourists who fueled everything from RV parks to restaurants. But in 2025, many of those RV sites sit empty. A report from the New York Post revealed that cross-border travel from Canada into Arizona is down over 35%. And it's not just tourism. Canadian retailers are pulling U.S. products off their shelves, hitting Arizona agriculture particularly hard. Citrus growers in the state, already strained by inflation, are seeing overseas orders vanish. The economic ecosystem built around Canadian traffic is unraveling. From real estate agents to local grocers, many Arizonans are asking the same question: can we survive without our northern neighbors? As the boycott intensifies, Arizona is learning that border proximity is no longer a guarantee of prosperity. Number 8. Montana. Montana, with its majestic mountains and peaceful border towns, once enjoyed a quiet yet dependable relationship with Canada. But in 2025, that friendship has frayed. The once busy crossings at places like Sweetgrass and Couts are now eerily calm. Gas stations, diners, and souvenir shops that once catered to Canadians now sit half empty. Canadian tourism to Montana has dropped by over 38% compared to last year, according to Forbes and Reuters. But even more alarming is how deeply interconnected these border economies are. In places like Kalispell and Shelby, entire communities relied on regular weekend trips from Canadian families stocking up on goods, fuel, and groceries. Now, those trips have stopped. Montana farmers and ranchers are also feeling the pain. With Canadian grocers boycotting U.S. food imports, agricultural exports from Big Sky country are plummeting. Local grain cooperatives report shipments cut by nearly a third. Montana isn't just losing money. It's losing trust in a trade system that once felt invincible. Residents now face a harsh reality. When diplomatic rifts grow, it's not the diplomats who suffer first. It's the small businesses on Main Street. Number 7. North Dakota. In a state where border traffic is the lifeblood of commerce, North Dakota is experiencing a crisis it never saw coming. For decades, towns like Pembina and Portal thrived off cross-border trade with Manitoba and Saskatchewan. But in 2025, that stream has dried to a trickle. As part of the Canadian boycott, small Canadian trucking firms have suspended deliveries, and family-owned shops are seeing their worst summer in decades. According to a July 2025 report from the Financial Times, Some border businesses in North Dakota have seen revenue drops of 35 to 50%, especially those tied to hospitality, fuel, and agriculture. One motel owner in Cavalier put it bluntly, "It's like the border shut down, but nobody made an announcement." Canadian farmers are now rerouting grain shipments through Vancouver and Prince Rupert instead of Grand Forks, leaving rail lines and trucking corridors underutilized. With no end in sight to the boycott, North Dakota's small towns may be headed toward a prolonged economic winter, one driven not by weather, but by lost trust. Number 6. Washington. Washington once shared a friendly, fluid relationship with British Columbia. From shopping trips in Bellingham to wine tours in the Okanagan, this was a border of commerce and camaraderie. But in the aftermath of Trump's renewed tariffs and verbal attacks on Canadian leadership, things have changed dramatically. As of July 2025, tourism from Canada to Washington is down nearly 42%, according to Forbes and CTV News. That might sound like just a number, but in border cities like Blaine, Linden, and Point Roberts, it translates to empty storefronts and canceled festivals. Canadian snowbirds who once wintered in Seattle suburbs are now turning to Vancouver Island or even Mexico. Meanwhile, the Columbian editorial board warned in July that Canada remembers, even if the politics change, the sentiment lingers. Washington's agriculture industry is also feeling the sting. Canadian grocers have reduced purchases of Washington apples and wine, pushing local producers into unsold surplus. What was once a neighborly trade route is now a cold front of silence. The message from Canada is clear. This isn't just a boycott. It's a reckoning with how Washington's closest friend was treated. And it's the people, not the politicians, who are paying the price. Before we move into the next country, smash that like, hit subscribe, and ring the bell. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Number 5. New York. When you think of New York, you might picture Times Square or Wall Street. But for border towns like Buffalo, Niagara Falls, and Plattsburgh, their lifeblood is far more local, Canadian tourists. Every year, millions of Canadians cross the border to shop, sightsee, and support small businesses. But not this year. In 2025, those cross-border visits have plummeted. Niagara Falls saw a jaw-dropping 43% decline in Canadian foot traffic, while malls in Buffalo report sales drops of up to 35% compared to last summer. A shocking report from the New York Post painted a bleak picture of empty parking lots and shuttered souvenir shops. One restaurant owner in Plattsburgh said, "We used to rely on Canadian families for nearly half our summer revenue. Now it's just quiet." And it's not just retail. Hotel occupancy is down, event bookings are flat, and entire festivals have been canceled due to low attendance. What triggered this freeze? The answer in part lies in Canadian frustration. Frustration with U.S. tariffs, with rhetoric, with policy, and with feeling like unwelcome guests. A growing number of Canadians have chosen to skip the border altogether. For towns in upstate New York, the silence is deafening, and if this trend continues, the economic aftershocks could ripple well beyond the summer season. Number 4. Michigan. Michigan has always been a magnet for Canadian tourists. With its proximity to Ontario, its sprawling Great Lakes, and its world-class shopping, the state has long welcomed millions from the north each year. But in 2025, a sharp economic chill is setting in. Data from Michigan tourism boards show an estimated 39% decline in Canadian visits compared to the previous year. Cities like Detroit, Sault Ste. Marie, and Port Huron are reporting steep drops in hotel bookings and retail sales. One major outlet mall near the Blue Water Bridge reported a 45% revenue drop since the boycott took hold. Canadian media coverage of the boycott has only intensified the effect, with outlets urging travelers to reconsider cross-border shopping due to escalating U.S. rhetoric and policy decisions. Business owners in Michigan say they're caught in the crossfire of a political storm they didn't create. A Detroit area hotel manager shared, "We've always had a steady stream of Canadians for concerts, sports games, shopping weekends. Now, crickets." And while Michiganders pride themselves on resilience, there's growing anxiety that this isn't just a passing storm. It might be the new normal. Number 3. Vermont. Vermont might not scream economic powerhouse, but its heartbeat has always pulsed quietly along the northern border. For decades, Canadian tourists, especially from nearby Quebec, were the invisible engine of local prosperity. They came for ski slopes, autumn foliage, craft beer festivals, and charming small-town escapes. But now, in 2025, that once reliable stream of goodwill and money has slowed to a devastating trickle. After the Canadian government formally placed Vermont on its list of non-preferred U.S. destinations due to escalating trade tensions and political rhetoric, tourism from Canada plunged by over 50%. Stowe and Killington, ski resorts once booked out by Montrealers through the winter season, now report weekday occupancy at levels not seen since the early months of the COVID-19 pandemic. Restaurants are reducing hours. Local ski instructors are looking for work elsewhere. The ripple effect is relentless. Even cultural events have taken a hit. A craft beer festival in Burlington, once flooded with beer aficionados from across the border, saw attendance drop by 40% this spring. Bed and breakfast owners around Lake Champlain reported an alarming uptick in cancellations just days before major Canadian holidays. What's worse, it's not just one-off trips being canceled, it's long-standing traditions quietly ending. Social media campaigns and Canadian news outlets are amplifying messages urging citizens to avoid U.S. states that are seen as unfriendly. Vermont, known for its progressive and calm demeanor, now finds itself unfairly lumped into broader anti-U.S. sentiment. In towns like Darby Line, where residents once walked across the border for groceries or coffee, local businesses now face the grim prospect of permanent closure. This isn't a loud or angry boycott. It's a cold shoulder, a silent separation from a relationship once taken for granted. And in a state where tourism contributes billions annually to the economy, that silence is economically and emotionally deafening. Vermont may not have started this geopolitical standoff, but it's paying one of the steepest prices. Number 2, New Hampshire. New Hampshire's rugged beauty and tax-free shopping once made it a beloved stop for Canadian travelers. In the fall, leaf peepers from Quebec filled winding roads and quaint inns. In the winter, skiers flocked to the White Mountains. And year-round, Canadians fueled retail giants in Conway, Portsmouth, and Nashua. But in 2025, that familiar rhythm has disappeared. According to Business Insider, Canadian tourist volume through New Hampshire's border crossings has dropped by more than 47% year over year. What makes it more alarming is the profile of the missing tourists. Not casual visitors, but loyal repeat customers. Montreal families who made yearly Christmas shopping trips, who booked the same inn every 4th of July, are now opting for vacations in Nova Scotia, British Columbia, or even overseas. Why the exodus? It's a blend of rising political tension, hostile rhetoric, and personal experiences that left a sour taste. Viral social media stories describe Canadians being harassed or treated rudely in U.S. border states. Meanwhile, Canadian influencers and travel blogs are circulating boycott lists, urging followers to support domestic tourism instead. The message is clear: your vacation dollars are more welcome at home. In New Hampshire, the effects are tangible. Hotel bookings are down. Major outlet malls are trimming staff and shortening hours. One shop owner in North Conway said, "The regulars, they just disappeared. No goodbye, no explanation. They simply stopped coming." Even local gas stations and restaurants are struggling. These weren't just tourist hotspots, they were pillars of regional commerce. Now inns are discounting rooms just to stay afloat, and once busy diners sit half-empty during peak season. New Hampshire has long prided itself on its tough, resilient identity, the Granite State. But even granite can chip and crack under enough pressure, and this pressure isn't coming from competitors, it's coming from the very neighbors it once proudly welcomed with open arms. For the first time in decades, New Hampshire is confronting a new reality. Economic loyalty, once assumed, can vanish in an instant. Number 1, California. If there's one state no one expected to land at the top of this list, it's California. Yet in 2025, the Golden State is facing a reckoning few could have predicted. From the sun-soaked vineyards of Napa Valley to the bustling film sets of Los Angeles, Canada's quiet but powerful boycott has sent an unmistakable shockwave through California's economic landscape. The bond between these two regions, once marked by cross-border travel, cultural exchange, and booming trade, is now splintering. According to the Distilled Spirits Council, Canadian boycotts of U.S. alcohol have already cost California tens of millions of dollars, and that's only the beginning. Liquor exports have dried up across key markets in Toronto and British Columbia, and California wines that once graced Canadian shelves are now being replaced by local alternatives or European imports. But this isn't just about alcohol. Canadian grocers have removed California-grown almonds, lettuce, citrus fruits, and even avocados in a symbolic protest that's rippling across the agricultural supply chain. The Port of Oakland, a critical hub for food and beverage exports to Canada, is experiencing noticeable slowdowns. Shipping containers bound for Vancouver and Montreal now sit idle for days longer than usual. Tour companies in Calgary, Ottawa, and Quebec have slashed California-bound vacation packages by more than 40%. San Francisco's iconic cable cars are emptier. Disneyland reports a drop in international ticket sales, and Canadian snowbirds, once a regular fixture in Southern California, are rerouting to Arizona, Mexico, or simply staying home. This isn't just a dent in California's bottom line. It's a direct threat to one of the most interconnected state economies in the U.S. agriculture, tourism, entertainment, logistics. Every one of these pillars is feeling the strain. California's vast economy means it can weather short-term turbulence better than most. But it also means it has the most to lose in long-term disruption. The timing couldn't be worse, as the state battles housing affordability crises, a shrinking middle class, and fiscal uncertainty. California once saw itself as a global gateway, a cultural and economic ambassador of the United States. But today, that image is cracking. And when one of the world's top 5 economies starts bleeding from a neighbor's rejection, it's no longer just a regional problem. It's a global headline. What began as a political disagreement has turned into something far more personal and far more costly. Canada's response to U.S. trade aggression wasn't just about tariffs or policies. It became a movement, a shift in mindset, a statement of values, and 10 U.S. states are now watching their economies bleed because of it. From the wineries of California to the maple syrup-tinted streets of Vermont, the fallout is clear. The bond between two nations is fraying, and the price is being paid at grocery stores, airports, hotels, and farms. This isn't just about economics. It's about perception, about trust, and about whether America is still seen as a neighbor or a threat. So we ask you, is this boycott just a passing political gesture, or is it the beginning of a longer, colder silence between two former friends? Let us know what you think in the comments. And if you found this breakdown revealing, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to Globe Discoveries. Because in a world where global friendships can collapse overnight, understanding the why behind it all has never been more important.